we're the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences. My name's Mark Ray, I'm the CEO, and we are an organization of 22,000 game makers, 2 of them right here, that maybe some of you in the room that are members, and we were formed to honor the best of the best in the business. And I don't get to pick who wins, I just get one vote. These guys get to pick who win every year, and that's the beautiful thing. They nominate what they think are the best games, and they work in this every day. They get to vote on it. And so the DICE Awards are held every February, last 10 years in Las Vegas. Supergiant's been a big part of it. They're friends of the Academy, Amir and Greg. They've won a DICE Award. They've been nominated for quite a few of the awards for Bastion. I have a feeling that their peers are going to look at what they're doing today, and we'll see them again next year. Well, they'll be at the conference, but I hope I see them. We do something at PAX, we've been doing it for a couple of years, where we call it the Academy's 10 questions. They're not my questions, they're questions that are sourced from the audience, from the community, from people who love their games and want to know more about what Supergiant's up to. So we source some questions and kind of go back and forth on what's cool, and you'll get to hear them respond to these questions from the community. We always have time afterwards, and what we like to do at that point is turn it over to the audience for audience questions as well. And knowing these guys as well as I know them, I'll put them on the hot seat, but I think they would say, you can ask them anything you want. Yep. And they'll answer honestly, and if they can't answer, they won't answer. But once we get through the community questions, feel free to step up, and if you really want to know something about game development or their company or what they're doing, ask away. And the nice thing about this audience, everybody here is a fan. We're all fans. We all love the company. There's a little bit of a community in the room. So again, ask away, and these guys will be good with that. So I'm going to start off with questions, and whoever wants to grab it there gets to grab it. And they're laughing. But and again, these are sourced from the community. So and if I mispronounce kind of a username or something, and you're in the audience, don't blame me and stuff. This one's easy, Strike Cross. And what would you say is the biggest challenge for you creatively and technically, and for the studio in general?
Wow.
Yeah.
We can start there.
Yeah. There's, we have a lot of, we're up to 10 people now. We were 7 on Bastion. And I think we're a pretty diverse group. And so making decisions like by consensus, getting everyone on board, is always an interesting process, and we know that by the end of that, this is a good time for your sunshine analogy.
Yeah, I was going to say, so the analogy I always give for the team and how the creative process works at Supergiant is there's a movie called Sunshine. It is 2/3 good and 1/3 not good.
Really good overall.
Yeah, really good overall. There is a point where the story is there's a spaceship, and there's a team of scientists and astronauts aboard the spaceship, and they're trying to restart the sun, I believe, and because the sun is dying. And there's a moment where they find a distress call from a second ship, and they're wondering if they should go and answer that distress call or try and finish the mission. So they sit around, and the pilot says, well, why don't we take a vote? We'll just take a vote, and whatever side wins the vote, that's what we'll do. And the captain intervenes, and he says, no, we're not going to take a vote. We're a team of experts. We're a team of astronauts and scientists, and the expert will decide. And for some reason, the expert who decides is like the psychiatrist, Cillian Murphy. But the point is, like, that's the way we like to do it, right? If it's like an art thing, then Jen should decide. If it's like a writing thing, then Greg should decide. If there's like a musical issue, then Darren should do it. If it's a performance thing, then Logan should do it. If it's an engineering call, then they just figure it out. So there's the 3 of them. So I don't know what their process is exactly. But the key part of that is that you trust each other, that you're only kind of doing your best work, and you trust people around you to tell you when you aren't. Which means that the hardest thing is when you don't know who should own something.
Yeah. Sometimes we don't know who the expert is.
Yeah, and I think like give you an example, like we often on Bastion used to struggle with like UI screens, because who owns the UI screen, right? There's like a sound associated with it, there's an audio line, there's a usability thing, there's a design, there's art, all the collaborative stuff. And I think there's no secret there. All we do is like fight, I guess.
Get everyone together.
Go ahead and have a conversation about it.
But yeah, we try never to compromise, really. It's like if people just kind of get browbeaten into submission on like a creative issue, like we tend to catch that and go like, no, this doesn't feel right. Like, what about this? What are we compromising on? Like, why does this not feel right? And get to the point where everyone can kind of look each other in the eye and nod their heads and go like, yeah, this makes sense. And then we try that, and half the time it fails. Then we try some other thing, and on until we get to something that we decide to show at PAX, and hopefully people like it.
But you guys are at a great size right now. I mean, 10 people you can put in a room, you can make a decision, you can argue, you can agree. You have been very successful. I anticipate you're going to be successful. You're going to continue to grow. What do you do when you have 40 people?
Well, so I don't actually know about that. Continue to grow part. So we are, I think the way we think of ourselves, we're not like growth resistant, but the only reason we hired even beyond the original team that made Bastion is because we felt like we weren't a complete team. Like we had most of the pieces, but like our modeling and animation, we didn't have an in-house modeler and animator. We worked with our friends who used to work with at EA. We didn't have like in-house visual effects and stuff like that. So for us, when we hire, our philosophy is that we're like looking to complete ourselves and like unburden someone who is doing too much. And in our case, it was Jen doing everything on the 2D art side. It is hard. A process where you care about what everyone thinks does not scale super well. So I think the trick is probably just to not scale.
Yeah, and so much of what we do and how we do it is wrapped up in the particular chemistry that we have among the individuals that are there right now, where every time you add a person, no matter how incredibly talented and lovely of a personality that person has, it still can change the culture of the team, because it's another voice and basically just another variable in any conversation. So we're very sensitive to that. We feel like the collaborative process that we just described is so important to what we do that we just want to hang on to that and keep doing things as like a small team. We don't spend a lot of time making PowerPoint presentations. We spend no time doing that. We just talk things through, right? And that makes it very, very efficient. And well, we haven't really gotten into this, but there's so much history among many of the members of the team. Amir in particular has known some of these guys since you were 10 years old or whatever.
Over 20 years.
Yeah. So that goes into a lot of our interactions, and it's really valuable.
Yeah.
Great follow-up question then from Ron Soar, and because everyone in here, I assume, played your games, they're anticipating your next game. Everybody's got ideas about what they like to do. Mm-hmm. If I were there, I'd do this, or I like that, but I'd do it differently, or that kind of thing. And this question is, have any player responses to Bastion surprised you? And then, did any of these responses shape how you went into your Transistor and how you developed that game?
Yeah, I think all the overwhelming positivity was a huge surprise. We get very frequent, here at PAX, we have very frequent, very, very touching interactions with our fans that mean a lot to us whenever you guys say you like it, or that you were moved by it, or any of that stuff. We take none of that for granted, and I don't think we could have guessed.
No, I mean, the way, we may have our own ideas about it as we're working on it, but it kind of exceeded our wildest fantasies, as it were, in terms of how impactful it was to how many people. So we still get emails pretty much on a daily basis of people who were really moved by the game. And early on in its development, we had this thought of well, we want the game to be more than just fun to play, and leave a lasting and positive impression. And part of that is actually born of a practicality. It's we're not doing multiplayer or whatever. So the game is going to be over in 6 or 8 hours or something. And well, we wanted to leave you with something. And if it's just fun I think is very kind of effervescent. And once you stop having fun, then you kind of forget about it. So we try to make it kind of do whatever we could to make it
Any
resonate.
specific examples around community input that kind of made you look at things differently?
Like there was one, there was one example of like a guy wrote an article about how like he was really struggling with like a divorce that he had, and like playing Bastion like let him make peace with it, which is like, whoa, okay, that's heavy. There was like another one that was like a guy's brother had just passed away, and he was in mourning, and like playing Bastion, he wrote to us this very heartfelt letter of like, he came to peace with it, and it was very interesting to see those kind of, we couldn't have possibly expected that, but it made a certain kind of sense, like thematically in terms of what Bastion is about. But we can't, Bastion is not like a self-help guide. We can't expect for something like that to impact people in that way. But of course, all of us are here because games have like impacted us heavily when we were growing up. So it's amazing that we could have provided that for some people out there.
Yeah, in terms of like it's maybe the smaller stuff, the influence of the community for us. So we, I think the only thing, like a concrete example of this, was there one or two things when you go to PAX, you see people do them, and you don't expect that people might do them with your game, and then you think, man, we should put a line there. Where it's like, the game should respond to that in some way. And that's like the secret focus test that happens multiple times an hour at PAX, but that can be really, really useful too in terms of just watching people play.
Yeah, little key, like there are moments early on in Bastion that people tend to, they're like funny moments. It's like kid just rages for a while, and then he falls to his death, and little moments like that that people laugh at, and we see them respond at something like PAX. But we like go back from the show and like do extra work to make sure that kind of happens in a particular way, because those moments they're more than just funny to us. We saw the real kind of potency of them, and having those are the moments where the game really connected with people who played it. And so we kind of refined that to make sure more and more people could have those experiences.
Yep.
Max Fair's off of Facebook, and you guys talked about being small.
Mm-hmm.
Small is a great thing when you get to have your own input on how you make a game, and it's in the room, it's not being dictated by anyone else. But being small, also being kind of indie, makes for some difficulties as well. Challenges about being small and how it might have impacted kind of development process? Sure.
I mean, so we used to work at Electronic Arts, and we made real-time strategy games there. We worked on Command & Conquer 3, Red Alert 3, the expansion pack for Red Alert 3. The expansion pack for Command & Conquer 3. Anyway, so you can see a theme there. We didn't dictate what we worked on, really. We were told, and we loved those games, and we wanted them to be very, very good. But the interesting thing about working at a large company, as anyone who works for any big company knows, is that your fate is almost entirely decided by people far removed from you. So every day you kind of wonder if this is a day that someone is going to make a terrible decision, like 5 steps above you, and now you're going to have to do something terrible.
But now we are responsible for the terrible decision.
Yeah. So it gets really hard when you have no one to blame but your own like fallibility and incompetence.
Yes, it's a nice double-edged sword. I mean, it feels really good, right, in the sense of like, but it comes with a certain amount of pressure as well. It's like, well, no one's gonna bail us out. We kind of will live and die by our own mistakes and whatever we do. And then, I mean, it's like you kind of have to do everything in addition to making, the actual video game.
Yeah, so it's like all of us are manning the booth, right? Like all 11 people. It's like one of the funniest questions we get asked. It's at E3.
Oh,
It's like, are there any developers here?
Can I speak to one of the developers? Can you direct me to PR?
Yeah, it's like, dude, we are them.
Yeah.
We are the developers.
Yeah, some people think that we're like the hired help, which is funny because we don't look the part. We would, So yeah, that part is interesting, and just I think like, what is difficult about being small. It's like another thing is like you just the changing of focus sometimes from moment to moment, going from like making the game to having to do all the other stuff. I mean, Amir as the studio director was like keeping the lights on, like doing. Now we have Michael
do that.
Just-
Thank God
just
for
to-
Michael.
Yeah.
If
to
you're watching,
the
thank you,
same,
Michael.
But yeah, thank you, Michael. You know, paying the bills on time, keeping the electricity running.
Yeah.
Like Supergiant started out at Amir's dad's house, so it was like keeping it clean, like all kinds of practical issues.
Take out, who
like
will
that.
take out the trash?
Yes, you will.
I will take the trash, though I do not know the way.
Yeah. So stop working on
Yeah.
the PAX demo or whatever.
Yeah.
Stop making Bastion. Go take out the trash. It
Yeah.
can create some cognitive dissonance once in a while, but I mean it's really, I think like switching focus rapidly it can kind of be a skill.
So you guys are saying that the mothership does a good job of taking out the trash?
Yeah, they do, actually. Yeah, that's the one thing they can do.
Zach Wilkes off of Google Plus. Is there any particular reason you continue to go with an isometric style perspective with your games as opposed to, say, a 3D perspective?
Yeah.
No. we like it.
Yeah.
It's funny, like Amir mentioned that we come from making real-time strategy games. Like we just like the isometric viewpoint. There's probably some level of comfort that we have with it, but I don't know that you would guess that Bastion was like made by people who made real-time strategy games, but the isometric perspective is like one of the little clues. And you would be surprised with Transistor that like, you know, we decided to go with the same camera perspective, but you would be surprised as to what we tried and went through before we finally, you know, arrived back at that decision. We don't make those we don't take those kind of decisions for granted and try to do what's right for the kind of game that we're thinking of. And in the case of Transistor, it was like so Bastion was like an exploration into the action RPG genre. Like we love action RPGs, but we didn't want to make Diablo because it wouldn't be as good. It's like Diablo is awesome for what it is, and we'd have to find something kind of off to the side to carve our own, you know, to create our own identity. It turns out there was some pretty fertile ground there, and even after that game, we were like, well, why don't we go off in this crazy direction now, this more like turn-based strategic thing. But yeah, so for now we have continued to explore isometry, but
Yeah.
who knows what's
We know
next.
all about the isometric camera, tilting it and moving it.
What is it, 31 degrees or something?
I don't know. We never know our own camera degrees.
We asked the engineers.
We actually don't know anything about the isometric camera. The three guys who are not here do, though. Yeah.
Any unexpected things? This is from Tifa, and then reviewers that they picked up on or didn't pick up on Bastion that surprised you?
Reviewers were pretty thorough. We got, it was really cool. I think that I will lump like community response. I don't think reviewers are like different from other humans who play your video game in the end. It was really amazing that people who played Bastion, like, we put some small things in there, little visual details or bits in the narrative that like we thought were like pretty hidden, but I think everything that we thought was cool about it that was pretty subtle, people picked up on. That was really satisfying to see, because like making a game, it's kind of like a form of communication or whatever. You're like putting it out there and you want to see if like people get it the way that you hope that they will get it, and it was great to see that kind of response from critics as well as players in general. We kind of, you know, it got really good reviews on the whole, which we were really pleasantly surprised by. But I think the thing that I often think about, especially as like a former game critic, is, you know, there's one thing when a game first comes out, there can be a rush of excitement about it, but I also often think about like how a game is remembered over time. And sometimes you get those games where the reviews are like through the roof when it comes out, and like a month or two later, everyone's like, oh, I don't know. Like their opinion kind of changes, and there tends to be a backlash and that sort of thing. And with Bastion, it felt like, knock on wood.
Yeah, we're still waiting for the backlash.
Yeah, people's opinions of it, we did not expect, like at the end of the year, that people still remember the game like more than 6 months after the fact. We were like, whoa, that's cool. That we were really pretty overwhelmed by that, because the reviews weren't like through the roof or anything like that, though they were very good.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah.
I've got maybe not a frustrated game developer, but someone maybe wants to be a game developer. You're Doug Shawn off of Facebook, and the question, and we get this, everything questions I don't care who the developer is, this question pops, and one of two forms. One, how do I get the business? But the other form is, how do I talk to the big boys and at least get a chance? I've got an idea, I've got a game, I think it's worthy.
Sure.
How do you do that? What would you suggest?
So I'm gonna let Greg answer this one, but now is a magical time, one of the best times ever, if you have a game idea, because you can make it yourself and actually be extremely successful doing it. The advice I give to a lot of people who are starting companies or starting games is depends on what you're trying to do, but let's assume for the most part that the reason you want to do it is because you have a passionate belief in something, either your game idea or your own ability. That means the best thing you can do is be as independent as possible. So the best way to maximize your independence is to do 100% of all the work yourself. And if you can't do that, which I cannot, and I suspect many people cannot, you find the right partners who are interested in doing it with you. And a small group of people can go and make something extremely, extremely successful.
Yeah. And I think there is a misconception around I have a great idea for a game and
yes.
Would you like to hear it? And the answer to that is and this is kind of rude actually. It's actually no.
Yeah.
Because the ideas are a dime a dozen, and we go through so many ideas. It's the ones that stick and the ones that we can actually pull off, using the limited resources that we have. Those are the really valuable ones, and we don't know which ones those are until we try it. And that comes back to what Amir said. It's the thing about right now, this moment in history, is you could go do this stuff yourself. No one, if someone is capable of making a game, they don't want someone else's idea. They want to make their own game. Because they've worked so hard to develop the means to be able to do that. And those tutorials are out there. It's free. The only thing that's stopping people is just straight up time and their own brains telling them that they can't succeed, or other people telling them that, telling them the odds, people telling the Han Solo the odds. It's don't listen to those people. If you care about it, just go sweat through it until you make it happen.
I think another thing about it is game development is really weird and awkward of a thing. It is not necessarily the best parts of playing a video game, just like anything.
Yeah.
So the really good thing about if you are curious, if you want to make a game, is you can just go try for 4 hours and see if you hate it.
Yeah.
You can go find my favorite test of this is really mature tools. So a lot of games have really awesome editors. I remember one of the first editors I used was for Heroes of Might and Magic 3. And I started making my map, which was going to be a 150-hour epic campaign based on my D&D campaign that I was at the time 15 years old or something like that. I didn't make 150 hours of content. I made 7 minutes of content, and it took me 45 hours or something like that. But the thing is, it took me 45 hours and I didn't stop. And I think that's the part that's the valuable lesson of even trying. You do it as a hobby first, and then suddenly it's your job, and then suddenly it's your whole life.
Yeah, I think there was an article by Tom Francis, who made a game called Gunpoint recently. Single-handedly, pretty much, or with a few. He did the vast majority of it, working part-time over 3 years or something like that. And he said, to paraphrase it, something it's a really great time to find out if you can. Not everyone can make a game necessarily, but everyone can find out if they have what it takes and if they really want to do it. Based on what Amir just said, you pick up StarCraft 2 editor, whatever, Unity, all sorts of different things. The barrier to entry is very, very low. That makes the bar high, because there are a lot of talented people out there, but you never know until you try it. There are even things like Twine out there that are very interesting, require no kind of, neither Amir or I are programmers, but you can use these things like Twine to make game-like, very interesting experiences using only text. So there are a lot of different avenues.
Yeah, and even though I make video games for a living, the thing I do in my spare time is I make pen and paper role-playing games that I play entirely with an audience of 4 people, one of whom is Darren in the audience right now, our composer. I've been playing with him for 25 years. I have the most amazing game system ever that no one will ever get to play because it's just based on an audience of 4 people, making 4 people happy. But it's like a fun design challenge for me personally to like just try and see if I can make a game targeted at 4 individuals, and I don't need, you know, an engineer or an artist or anyone to do that. I can just do that on my own as much as I want, forever and ever. Yeah.
Well, so, hey, we do a thing at the Academy that where our speakers is at the summit, the Innovation Summit in the Las Vegas Summit. We kind of do a 10 questions, kind of back of the magazine interview. What's inspired you? Books, movies, literature, music. You know, what keeps you going? I'm going to get off this question a bit. They're asking when you're particularly in a game, what keeps you inspired? But I would broaden that. And Amir, you've done our 10 questions in the past, but Greg, you haven't. And I'd ask kind of for the audience, kind of what has been inspirations out of media that you do draw on for games?
Yeah, it's a lot of things, and it's like this is like the toughest question for me because it's like it's weirdly.
What's your favorite movie? Right.
Yeah. It's like it's very disarming because I can't. I can go on for so long about why certain things are inspiring to me, but you know, above all, although I would say I take influence from all sorts of different media, but I would admit straight out that games have been like profoundly above all media the most important to me, and I grew up playing them since my earliest memory, and it's like memories of playing certain games when I was like, you know, between 6 and 8 and 10, 12, and so on.
So what were your favorite games, 6 to 8 to 12?
So there was a game, an old computer role-playing game called Ultima 4 that I played when I was 8 years old. That like from that moment, I'm like, I want to make games. Like all I know is some human being made this. I have no idea how. This is mind-blowing, and I just wanted to do it. That game like was profoundly influential to me. Like not just that game is like a, you know, teaches you like about morality and stuff. It's like pretty heavy, and most modern RPGs can be traced back to it. So that was like incredibly eye-opening at the time as far as like what power games really had. But you know, there's a lot of
anything either one of you can think of that's rather obscure. It's not from the game world. It's a little bit obscure. People might not have heard of it. That has it's made an imprint, you know, and not from the game business, but
yeah.
Go ahead.
You can. So there, in college, I read the work of an author named William Gaddis, who started writing in the mid 20th century or so, and his writing was kind of very profoundly impactful to me, particularly his first 2 novels. I can't point to very much in the work I've done that seems directly attributable to that, but it just as a writer and his ability to like capture the human voice and like express what someone is thinking and feeling just through the words that someone says and like the subtext of those words that has been like he's been very influential to me. So that's an example of a random
and
thing.
what about you, Amir? If somebody could take something home and they want more to grab
Well,
something
they can't take this
never-
one home. My influence is just personal, which is, so I'm just going to keep talking about D&D, and then we're just going to keep talking about Dota at some point, which also teaches you about humility.
Yes.
Very important life lessons in Dota. So I love D&D. I wrote a letter when I was young to Gary Gygax, who has now passed away, who was one of the co-creators of D&D. And my letter was like, you know, I often change the rules of D&D because your rules are like, okay. And is it okay that I change them? And he's like, yeah, they are there to be changed. And he actually wrote me a letter back, which was like super, super amazing. And suddenly I felt like, wow, I was like I'm a game designer now. Gary Gygax said it was okay. So,
Do you still have it?
I don't have the letter actually. Yeah, I don't have the letter. I wish I had the letter. But yeah, it was a pretty amazing moment.
Yeah, I guess the
Yeah.
whole group in here thinks rules are made to be changed.
Yeah.
That's good. Girl Got Game, she must be a music fan. She's going to ask what leads. Does design lead music, music lead design, and how does that work?
It just depends on the day, right?
Yeah, it really does. I mean,
Yeah.
the key is that Mr. Darren Korb, who's right over there, our composer and audio director, is involved early on. When we talk, like, we talk a lot about tone, like early on in the project when we have like nothing. We just like think about the kind of tone and atmosphere of the game that we eventually want to exist. And music has a really potent ability to create atmosphere and tone when in the absence of anything else. So Darren is sort of the tip of the spear, as it were, in terms of like discovering our tone. Like we talk about it and we start to try to articulate it in words, and then Darren goes off into his crazy cave with his Mac and his guitars and his mandolins and whatever else he has, and often comes back with something that's like, we're like, whoa, yeah, that's it right there. So, sometimes it takes a couple of tries, but soon enough, something comes up. So like in the case of Bastion, I think it wasn't the first piece, but pretty early on, like the main theme that you hear the title screen and pieces like Terminal March like came online when the game.
It was like in the first month. Yeah.
Yeah, the game was still filled with like artwork scanned from D&D. Like it looked terrible. Their screenshots.
No, it looked awesome. Actually,
yeah,
it
looked amazing.
I looked back at it.
It wraps all around from terrible to amazing.
Yeah.
But the music that like shipped in the final game, like some of that was already there, and we just like chased after that, in terms of getting the other aesthetics in place.
Yeah, it's interesting. Darren like coined a term early on for the kind of music he was making, which he's talked about in other talks, which is like acoustic frontier trip hop, which he coined after making one of the first initial set of pieces, and that was like, wow, that's actually like an interesting idea for like a lot of things in this world. So it stuff like that, it's sometimes ahead and sometimes it's like behind. If like we're working on we were actually talking about this recently. Like a lot of the music in the second act of Bastion came. Are we talking about X? What's the level?
Well, just like once you get to the wild unknown and stuff. So
a lot of the art
pieces like a spike and a rail.
Yeah.
Like that came. Like we already had the look of we're talking about how like, okay, we've gone from this kind of ruined city environment. Now we're like off in the wild, and it's going to be inspired by this kind of like Louisiana bayou, like kind of overgrown type of environment. And so we already had a sense of what that, like in that particular case, we had a lot of visuals and stuff like that for Darren to tap into, and then he comes back with these pieces like Spike and a Rail and Slinger Song that I think are like pretty iconic.
Yeah,
they're
they're really good. Yeah.
But yeah, so and then other examples like Build That Wall were very collaborative, of like wanting specifically to like use a vocal piece at a particular moment during gameplay, and it's in a lot of games like the music comes later or whatever. They can a lot of AAA productions, they'll like pay a really fantastic composer a whole bunch of money to make them a bunch of awesome music, and the music is great and maybe the game is great too, and they kind of put it all together and it's fine. But it's different when you collaborate directly with someone like Darren, who is like kind of like scoring the game, and he's like plays the game all the time, whatever. He's like involved in the design process. Then like the music can be a really much more deeply integrated part of the game. And thankfully, we have mentioned that we were overwhelmed by the response to the game, but in particular, like how people responded to the music really blew me away, because I feel like among like everything, music is super subjective, right? It's like you just expect that someone, whatever, I like Radiohead, but you think it's terrible or something. But like, it seemed like everybody loved the soundtrack in a really just remarkable way.
To show you like what we mean about music leading sometimes too, like the track was called Town Music Rough for like the whole project. Before it got its real name, and because we're gonna change that later, and like no, we didn't. It was just good, and we're just gonna keep that one. The rough one stays.
Nice. Hey, last question here, and then we're gonna go to audience questions.
Sure.
But, Jake Falls off Facebook, and what's the most fun you guys have had developing games?
Oh.
And again, it better be a good story, because,
Yeah. This is like a this is a cheap answer. I apologize for the.
I'll give a not cheap one.
I'm gonna brown
You
nose.
just buy me some time. Keep going.
Yeah. Okay. No, but seriously, so going to PAX the first time 3 years ago.
Oh, you
was
stole
like,
mine.
What?
No, just kidding.
Yeah. So no, seriously. So like that was actually when I first joined the studio. We all piled into a van and drove 17 hours to Seattle to like show.
Which is a terrible idea.
No, it was awesome.
It was awesome for the first 4 hours, and then the rest of it was terrible.
Yeah, but I mean the response we got, I mean you'd shown the game to people at like GDC and like closed environments when it looked really different and stuff like that. But this is the first time, like kind of prime time. Okay, this is our chance to get people to play this game and see what they think, and maybe get some press and stuff. And like people just, man, we were astonished by how positive the response was, and I don't know that like that was just one of the best moments ever for me, not just like professionally. It was just amazing to see people like so happy to play. I've never worked on a game where I saw people like visibly affected by it. Like when you watch people play real-time strategy games.
Yeah.
It's just, and then, you know, what do you think afterwards? And they're like, that was awesome, or whatever. And I play games like that myself. Like, I don't, you know, I'm playing my favorite game ever, and it's just stone cold.
Yeah.
But people were like laughing and like visibly moved by it. It was really just astonishing to see. So that was, anyway, it was a really fun trip. It was cool. It gave us a ton of momentum to just keep pushing and make the game what it was.
Yeah, I mean, to build on that, I think just to think about like what a humbling experience this has been. PAX 2010 was the first time people like anyone could just pick up the controller and play the game. We were in the PAX 10, so we were sort of we got to come, we got a seat, and we got a spot with one monitor, and we were right next to the Behemoth, which is a company that really inspired us to go start our own stuff. They're celebrating their 10-year anniversary this year, right? So they're like they have a very long and storied history, which is good for them. And it's shocking to me now to see that, like, wow, we have like a 50-foot long booth now, like 10 feet away from where we were, and we never thought that would be possible. And it's, I don't know, what's the most fun? The shows are really fun, I think, for us, because it's like one of the rare times that all of us are together in the same place. Darren and Logan are in New York, and it's just the opportunity to be together and just be humans and not be base camp tasks to each other. That part is pretty amazing. Hopefully we'll tell a good story later, because neither of those were particularly funny. All right.
Okay, so we had these were vetted questions. They were good answers. I have no idea what's coming out of this. So
I am excited.
So you guys now get to
just go alternate.
The audience and go for it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So at the end of Bastion,
Oh.
my opinion, the most important part. Well, one of the most meaningful parts is the choice you made at the end. Which choice did you guys make?
All both of them
Yeah, we
frequently.
made both of them.
Yeah.
So
All the time.
Yeah.
There were a lot of bugs. You gotta do every combination of choice.
So the choice, like people ask like what the canon ending is. I understand the nature of your question. So like the choice was like always fundamental to the ending. Like it was, one did not kind of exist before the other. It wasn't like, oh, we should add this other choice. It was like that was the whole point all along. There was a point in development when we like weren't sure we could like do it, but we were very glad that we did. And if you think about it from a certain point of view, the endings are not incompatible with each other. So when people ask what's the canon ending, they both are.
Yeah. So we're sorry for that answer.
Did that answer your question?
I just wanted to hear
It's a form of answer.
Yeah.
Words came out. All right.
You keep hitting New Game Plus until you finally hit the other one.
No, you can. What? Yeah, that's true. No, you can play New Game Plus without anything.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Sorry.
You
Next
play as
question.
many times as you want.
Yeah.
Hi, I was just wondering, obviously everyone here is really a huge fan of Bastion. I was wondering, what are you guys doing moving forward, looking towards Transistor? What's one thing that you think you want to change from Bastion to Transistor?
I can say something on the process side.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of wanted to, we kind of wanted to change the whole thing from a certain point of view. Like we wanted to kind of see if we could do it again. And like a thing, a lot of it. So back to like what was fun about Bastion. A lot of it was really fun, especially when people liked the result. And we really liked just like making something from scratch, just making up this weird like fantasy frontier world, and seeing people respond positively to it. So it's like, well, let's see if we have it in us to do it again, like to come up with some other interesting kind of self-contained, fully realized world with where everything about the world and the gameplay, it all kind of fits together, and make something that feels complete but is different and separate from Bastion. The way I put it is like just trying to create another game with its own identity. So as I mentioned before, like we don't, even when we come back to certain decisions that are similar to ones we made on Bastion, like from the sort of genre choice of action RPG to like to the isometric perspective, you'd be surprised as to how much we like sort of second guess those things. So maybe we end up coming around to some similar decisions along the way, but as long as the feel of it is different and distinct, I think we're doing okay.
All right, here we go.
Yes, sir.
Just a quick statement and a quick question. Darren, please eventually make a full album of Acoustic Frontiers. I actually enjoyed playing the game on iOS, and this is awful, but more than on the PC.
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
Please, that took us so much time.
Yeah.
And so we didn't farm out that port. That was all us.
It
So
was amazing. I loved it.
Thank
you. Yeah.
Are you planning on doing that with Transistor too?
So yeah, we don't know. Right now, Transistor will be launching on the PS4 and PC via Steam and our own website. Beyond that, we don't know.
Yeah, like
Please do.
Okay.
yeah, for what it's worth, I would have never imagined, like when Bastion came out on XBLA at the beginning, like if you'd have told me like the game's going to be on iPad in another year, I'd be like, no way.
Yeah.
But it's part of one of the advantages of being small is like we don't have to plan too far ahead, and we can just sort of go after what our whims tell us is a good idea at the time. And at a certain point in time, we're like, hey, this is really interesting, and let's see if we can adapt this game to this style of interface. And yeah, we found that the experience of playing it on the iPad, it like really brought out certain parts of the game in a way that felt different and in some ways better than the other versions.
I was totally shocked at how good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what do you have to say about people who do interesting things like make a modern game in assembly because they don't want to learn a new language, like Black Annex?
You should make a game in whichever language is available to you. I think that's awesome. Again, I alluded to things like Twine and stuff earlier, where I think part of the beauty of games is that they're like kind of formless. They're not as strict in their definition as a lot of other media. And I think like there's some people who want to pigeonhole them more and say that they need to be made a certain way. But I love that game. I love that there's kind of a separate faction that's super resistant to that, and I think the form itself is resistant. So Amir, makes pen and paper games, that take place largely in your imagination, stuff like that. You might make a game in assembly. More power to you.
So,
Thank you.
One thing, WarioWare DIY is another one of those mature things. You spend a couple hours making a game and then it takes 5 seconds to play it.
Yeah, that is true.
So
Yeah.
that is fine,
Yeah.
because especially if it's a good 5 seconds.
Yeah.
There are many games. I mean, their Journey came up in the little reel at the beginning of there are games that like are years in development that are short in terms of their like playtime duration. But again, if they stick with you, then they're not really short from a certain point of view. Then like whatever, Ultima 4, which I mentioned before, that was a long game, but it was not like 36 years long, and yet here I am still talking about it. Like, that's some lasting value. No multiplayer, go figure.
Yeah.
I mean, make something just make something that has an impact. But there are these games like Passage, like super short games that can be very, very potent. And again, I think that's part of like the beauty of what games can be, is that it's better to take the time to make it right, but like it doesn't. How long it lasts the player is not directly proportional to how good it is necessarily.
Next question.
Just to build off what the guy said about iOS, I played it like 5 or 6 times, and I had it on the 360 first.
Yeah.
I go back and play it, I can't play it anymore.
Yeah.
I played the War Machete Army Carbine build out, and it's like, oh, I can throw the machete!
Yeah.
Yeah. That was one of those changes you have to make. Throws were sacrificed. But such is life.
So my question is actually related to game theory. I'm not sure how familiar you are with it, but there's a theory called ludology, which essentially says that when you analyze games in the context of entertainment, you should analyze just the game based on the rules. Like, story should be inconsequential to when you're analyzing the game.
Sure.
And I just wondering, as developers, like, do you agree with that? Like, do you think we should analyze games on the merit of games, especially considering how much the story of Bastion is telling that relates to what you're doing at any time?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know what our answer is going to be. It's like if we thought narrative was inconsequential, then Bastion would be a pretty different game, and I personally would not be here right now. Yeah, I mean. Some people are like, could you would Bastion be? I got a question on Twitter just recently. It's like, would Bastion be as good of a game if the narration weren't in it? I'm like, no. Probably
Shipped Bastion then? Probably not. Yeah. I mean, I think part of it, like, people should analyze games however they want. I mean, you should think about games with story, without story. Who cares? I mean, that's a different kind of thing than crafting the game, which for us is that's the occupation we're in.
Yeah, and we just one more thing on that. It's like we are a gameplay driven studio, but we see narrative as being in service of the play experience. It's not like, here's the story that we want to tell in the form of a game. There's it's very important to us, but it has to work for the style of play that we're developing, and like otherwise we'd be trying to make comics or movies or something like that. But we choose to make games. And we think as part of that gameplay and narrative can exist in harmony, that they don't need to be fighting against each other. So it's all part of the game, from my personal point of view.
All right, thank you very much.
Next.
Hey guys, I got to play Transistor actually at PAX East this year.
Cool.
And it's absolutely incredible. But what drew me in even more than the art, which is incredible, was the combat. As someone who's a big fan of like Gaia and like Fire Emblem Awakening, of a big grid-based strategy kind of thing, and when I saw people playing, I'm like, that is such a unique take on combat. What kind of inspirations or ideas, like, where did you get the ideas for that combat? Sure.
I mean, I think for us, we were interested in going and trying to do something that was more strategic and tactical, and a lot of people on a team play turn-based games. So, one of my favorite computer games is Fallout 1 and 2, which is single character, turn-based combat. And so I think, and we all have games we love like that. I think Greg and Jen love Final Fantasy Tactics and stuff like that. So for us, we had a lot of that bouncing around our minds, but we were interested in doing that kind of feel and taking it into a more immediate and real-time context.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's exactly right. And seeing, again, and thinking back on how we did want to combine like narrative and gameplay in an interesting way, seeing if we could like capture that feeling without necessarily going straight into the exact mechanics of it. Like what are the feelings associated with turn-based games? Well, it's like the drama of like deliberating. It's like planning your next move, and that moment where you hit go and you're like, okay, is this going to succeed or is this going to fail? Like, what are they going to do on their opposing turn? Mm-hmm. And I think we capture a lot of those sensations in this game, even though it's not like straight up your turn, their turn, which leads to like a more fluid experience. And actually, like back to our strategy game roots, it's like we love strategy games, and we often thought a lot about how do we like get people to engage in strategic play without necessarily like pushing a strategy game on them, because strategy in and of itself like is not necessarily fun. That was my joke from the other day.
Yeah.
It sounds like math or something like that. It's
Let's
like,
do strategy.
Yeah. But you like but you like the sense of like outsmarting, outmaneuvering. Like those things are cool. So trying to bring that out in our moment to moment play.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Speaking of a Bastion without a narrator, it kind of blew my mind that it was possible to play the game without that narrator off, so I was on. So how do you consider telling a story for the player that has the narrator turned off?
And they probably just have a totally different story.
Yeah,
They're trying to imagine what that game is about.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, we like, hey, like it's up to you. Like even if you do, you could still play the game with like your volume off and actually back to like the iPad version or whatever. Like probably a lot of people play through the entire game without sound, and it's like we don't really know what that's like between the music and the narration. That's super important, but we at the same time we did everything we could to make like an exciting game to play. Like we don't use those other elements as like as a crutch or something. So people should play it and get out of it whatever they want, and if they just have fun, rolling around and hitting dudes with a sail hammer, that's cool.
Which I do.
Yeah. So that's, we kind of don't care as long as you enjoy your experience with it. But there's kind of a more complete experience, I suppose, if you take in all those elements together. Yeah, we don't kind of begrudge. We never think in terms of like we never think in terms of like, oh, you're playing it, oh, you're doing this the wrong way. It's like your experience with it is your own, however you choose to take it in.
Thank you for your question.
I have a really, really quick question.
Yeah.
So the term, like your teleport power is docking. Is that from a book called The Stars of Destination?
No comment.
Yeah. Some of us may have read that book.
Yeah.
In The Stars My Destination, it's jaunt with an E at the end. So
yeah.
It's very different.
Yeah.
That's a great book. It's
Okay.
a kind of a proto-cyberpunk novel.
Yeah. Looks like we got. Okay, let's go. See what we can do here.
All right. A question about the communication aspect. As you were saying, how the game communicates with the player. On Bastion, the narration is very kind of speaking to us as we play the game, right? But I went this morning to Transistor. Yeah, awesome. 10 minutes you guys are doing the line, really fun. But what not shocked me, but what I realized was the narrator guy is actually in the weapon itself, and it's more speaking to the player. And I don't even know what the question is, but in that direction, like, why did you choose that route where it's not really speaking to us anymore, but to the player? Are we supposed to now imagine that we are the player, or
Yeah, so the voice coming from the Transistor, is talking to the character in the world. It's like a character in the world now. It's kind of like two characters in the world, one of whom is talking to the other. From our point of view, it is a big narrative. It's a big modal change, even though it may on the surface seem similar. We wanted, like everything else about Transistor, we wanted to see if we could kind of do something different. The narration in Bastion was extremely effective at doing what we wanted it to do, which was to kind of deliver hopefully an interesting narrative experience at the player's own pace. So no matter how fast or how slow you go through it, the narrative keeps up. We in the end, that became one of the defining characteristics of that game. And it's kind of like a card that we could play or whatever. We could do another thing with narration, but like we wanted to see what else we could do with it. And we were very intrigued by this kind of partnership of characters, one sort of literally carrying the other around, and the relationship between a character with no voice and a character who has been reduced to only a voice, and what we could do with that. So we're still exploring it, and it's led to some kind of fun opportunities. But we don't think of it as it's just sort of in a different direction that we want to explore and see what we can find.
You're really excited to see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, and I hate to do this, guys, but PAX, one thing they do really well, they keep on schedule. Yeah. And so we have time for one more question. And then I want to thank the guys at Supergiant for doing this. A big favor to the Academy. It's great for these guys to get in front of you and answer questions. I know that they brought some swag, and that people who asked questions, please come back up and sort of partake. And I'm not sure what they'll do with the rest of it. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. Just if you ask the question, come up and we'll see what
the rest of y'all can, of course, come by our booth. We'll be around.
Yeah, stand there all day for 4 days. Yeah.
So one more question, I think.
Yeah.
So when I've been playing Bastion, what I find myself thinking so often is that it's like a Western, but with all the crappy parts thrown out, and really like a Western done right. And, sorry. So and I feel like this one, like, it's unlike any other noir I've ever seen. It is a noir, and so I had to wonder, like, does genre and your desire to make genre better influence you guys at all, or?
Yes and no. Like it's definitely sort of we like taking the form genre as a form and then seeing what we can do to sort of subvert expectations around it. So genre I think makes a very kind of useful starting point. So yeah, it's kind of a Western feel in Bastion's case, and this sort of like cyberpunk is kind of the starting point for Transistor that we then sort of twist and add these different ingredients to. I think that like leads to unexpected feeling results that hopefully, like we like that sense of things that are fresh but familiar, to use somewhat of a common term. It's hard to find that right balance, but I think you can like come up with stuff that's wildly different fairly easily, which is like open the dictionary, pick one word at random, then pick another word at random, and do a few more, and you'll come up with some wild idea that no one's ever thought of, but it's going to be so dissonant. Yeah, it's going to be so dissonant and weird that I like people probably won't find it interesting, whereas starting with like a genre convention, then twisting it a little bit, I think can lead to good results.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming, and thanks again, Amir, for